It takes a while. I forget. Hello, everybody. This is Kelsey here at Kenio. While we wait for some more people to join, because you know there's always a few people lagging behind. They go to get a cup of tea and get distracted in the kitchen. I just wanted to offer a bit of support. If you're having issues, I have attached a document in the chat, which you are welcome to start chatting in as well. You should see a panel on your right with a couple different options of where you can click to things, and should see a chat right away. So feel free to type in there if you're having any issues whatsoever, or just to let us know where you're tuning in from. We are on Brighton in England today, and it is very rainy. So if you're lucky, maybe you're tuning in from somewhere a bit nicer with some garden Wi-Fi. All right, so with that, you are joining us for how to make mobile work. And we've got our team of experts in the room today to really help you out today. So over to you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks for joining us in this webinar. I'm told that although it's wet and gloomy here, it's bright and sunny in the north of the UK. So there you go. I'm James Corey-Wright, Head of Learning Design at Kineo, and I'm joined by...
Hi, I'm Owen Works. I'm Solutions Art Director at Kineo. Today I will be discussing some of the do's and don'ts of mobile UX design, as my general day-to-day practice is coming up with concepts, designs, and various UI elements for several of the brands and companies that we work with.
Hello, I'm Tom Adams. I'm a senior lead learning designer at Kineo. So that means I am involved in the design of the sort of flow, structure, overall theme of the learning. Today I'm going to be sharing an example of a course that we created that was mobile first, and I'll share some of the things that we learned, some of the things that went well, and some of the things we'd do differently next time.
Hiya. I'm Kirsty Hames, and I'm a front-end developer at Kineo. As a front-end developer, I'm responsible for turning flat mocks into live designs, and I'm going to share with you today what I've learned so far from mobile first.
Okay, thanks everyone. So, I mean, basically in terms of just positioning what we're going to, where we're coming from today and so on, and what we've really got is sort of light on theory and heavy on practice, because basically our three colleagues here are all practitioners hauled out of the production team. So the emphasis is very much on practical insights and advice and hopefully some opinions too from the shop floor. I'm about to contradict that by then spending a few minutes myself talking about some of the sort of background of where we're coming from in this webinar. So first of all, I suppose I've got a question for you guys, is which are hopefully type all your answers into chat, please. Is what are you hoping to get out of today's session? So just type down and let us know what you're hoping to get out of today's session, so we can possibly adapt what we do a little bit to answer any questions or give some of that for you if possible. Okay, and moving on. What about, obviously there are some assumptions here. We're doing this webinar from Kineo. We're a production house, and most of our clients are corporate clients. We're not in the education sector, and this sort of shapes, the sort of content that we produce on mobile. We can't pretend otherwise. So there are certain kind of assumptions. For example, when we produce mobile content, it's rarely just for mobiles. Most of the time it's multi-device, by which I mean for mobile, for smartphones and tablets and desktop and laptops. So it rarely sits in isolation. Even if it's mobile first, it's not mobile only, or very rarely. I think Tom's case study is going to talk you through later is an exception to the rule. So by and large, we're doing multi-device stuff, and that has quite a bearing on what we do. Secondly, as I just said, we producing corporate learning content, which kind of means that, 90% or even higher of the content we produce runs off LMSs, which again has an impact on how we design and the shape of how our content runs and what it looks like. And having said that, most of what we now currently produce these days is in ADAPT, which is a responsive development framework. So those are kind of, and that's where we come from. That's our background. And so today is not sort of all about pure driven mobile design. We're focusing on that, but we're coming from a place that's slightly different. Okay. Now, so a question for you, which Kostya's going to put up on the screen, is what proportion of corporate learning content do you think is currently run on smartphones as opposed to all the other devices I've just mentioned? So just take a second while you respond and see what comes up.
Not a lot. We can talk about it.
Have you got any responses at all? Oh, we can't see.
Yeah, so right now it's fluctuating still a bit. I think it's about to settle down. We've got most people coming in towards the lower end, 70 and 90%.
No.
So not massive confidence on that. I'm going to go ahead.
20.
You went 20.
20.
I've got here 20
I'm
from
with
Owen.
you. 20
What do you reckon?
here.
Well, I know the answer, so I will keep quiet. I can see the next slide.
All right. Okay. So basically
in
quite
the
low
bulk,
on.
it's 10%.
Yeah.
We got 44%, and for 20%, we've got 44%. And those thinking it's 50%, 11%.
Okay. Well, it means everyone's roughly right. I mean, I did a kind of quick.
Got it.
Cheating. Oh, it's cheating.
I couldn't see the
Yeah.
slide.
And I just want to do a quick check with everybody. Are you seeing the next slide that has the answers? Just because sometimes the poll can cause things to lag. So if somebody could just type in the chat if you are seeing the answers. It says device usage at the top.
Okay. Well, this was a quick sort of. I had a quick look at the end of the office at the dashboard that's up there, and this was a quick snapshot from an LMS usage dashboard, I guess. I think that's what it's called. And it's, it's mostly desktop, which tells you quite a lot. So that's why I said earlier on, the content does influence to a certain extent, and the clients that we work for obviously influences, the devices that the content goes out on. Or does it? That's a bit of a sort of, there's a bit of a question hanging over that one. Those sort of, I would argue, disappointing stats in a sense, because phones are a good, personally I think are an excellent device. It does fly in the face of, very much so, of the world outside being at work, outside being an employee. 3 years ago, Ofcom would come up with a statement like this about the UK. The stats now are a sort of ownership and usage of smartphones, let alone mobile, are amazing. I don't think we need to go into them. I think we just see it going on all around us. And indeed, these stats they're old, they're sort of 2 years old. They also indicate that the smartphone usage across the world is pretty high. It's varied, but it's all over the place. Okay. The next one. Interestingly, when at Kineo, we've developed a kind of mobile-led or mobile-first solution, which we did for one of our major accounts, which is being used by 40 to 50,000 users across the world. Interestingly, the statistics are really amazing. Sort of 70% of that very large audience are using mobile to access that learning content, which does sort of suggest that basically it's a myth that mobile somehow isn't suited to corporate learning, or indeed, or online learning at all. And the thing is, with this particular account, the content we design is mobile first. We're mindful of that, so we make sure it works well, it looks good, it runs appropriately. But best of all, it's popular and it's used and it's successful. And I've left the other pie chart in because in a way, what's going on? You've got the situation with the small pie chart as it is, but you've got this great potential, proven potential, for mobile first delivery of content. So I forgot what the next slide is. Opportunity knocks. It was a very old game show, which I don't know if anyone remembers, but it was called Opportunity Knocks. So I think that's Huey, a very young Huey Green. What I wanted to say is, it's pretty obvious as far as I can see. It's a shout out for mobile first, for mobile led learning. There's a huge opportunity there. I think those stats just prove it. That if they're really, really low, and it's terrible that we're sort of desktop bound. When it comes to corporate learning, I think it has to stay at the desktop. But there's a whole bunch of other learning content that is not compliance. And really, I think I sort of hope that we will change, and that more and more will start to do more mobile first design. But for that to happen, people have to believe that the smartphone is a valid device for delivering learning content. I think in this room, I don't know whether everyone thinks that, but I certainly do.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. So it's great that we're having this session today. Okay. So I suppose the question is, which is your preferred device for running learning content? There's a question there that's come up, and you can respond to that. Maybe we'll come back to that one, shall we?
We could.
Yeah, crack on. Yeah,
hold that for the end.
Yeah, and move on to another. I was trying to invite you to respond. Are we able to move on to the next? Kelsey, no, we're just waiting a second while we get some responses. Lesson to be for the next webinar: don't put two questions next to each other. Yeah. Or you really make it difficult for yourself. Have you got any response to that, or should we?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we've got, I'm going to end the poll, but we've got 80% saying desktop, 7% saying tablet, and 13% saying mobile.
Very orthodox. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. It'd be interesting, but of course, I can't speak to you to know whether that's because you accept the status quo, or whether that's because it's a genuine preference. And to what or whether that's a mistrust of being able to consume content on tiny screens, or an unwillingness to use your personal phone for work learning.
The variety of the environment and the content that you're learning.
Who knows?
A lot of factors. But
maybe bad experience on having it on mobile already.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is one of the things we're talking about. Hopefully, in the future, obviously, we've come from learning on desktop for many years now, and at Kineo, we're believing that mobile will be the future. So, hence talking about it today. It's good to get everyone's feedback and explore the future.
It looks like we've also got a long way to go.
Oh, we shall see.
Well, we haven't, because that 70% stat.
Yeah.
70% usage shows what can happen when there is a demand and when it is appropriate.
Yeah.
And so, how are we doing for time? We got 3:15. Right. So I'm going to crack on.
I started the poll for this question on what are the most important for learners, and people are typing away on that. Okay. So yes. So I suppose the question that's the sort of theory and the call out for the shout out for mobile. Come on, let's just produce more content for mobile over with, and let's now get into the nitty gritty. Well, if you are designing for mobile, what are the considerations? What are the tips and tricks and so on and so forth? Just very quickly then, because there's some quite useful research in terms of what users or learners look for from their mobile learning experience. And I wondered, first of all, what you thought in terms of what do you think is the most important
aspect of mobile design?
So I've just closed that poll, but I can pull up the answers really quick if you give me
Or for this one, yeah, okay.
I would say all of them are pretty
splits of a
equal.
second.
Yeah, they're all a bit. They're fairly
So I know the
close.
first one
I'd agree.
didn't have any.
Uh-huh. Which is interesting because duration is an issue for some people. They like their learning to be bite-sized and very short.
It's just a key feature in terms of how we are as a, not a nation, as people. Society nowadays is everything bite-sized, short.
Yeah. We had 8% for ease of use, for relevant and useful 67%, attractive interface 8%, and quality of the content was 17%.
17. So relevant and useful is the highest. That's interesting. That's actually not. If you go to the next slide, some research that by Agilia a few years fairly recently came out with not that answer really. It was more on the ease of use and attractive user interface. They were the main sort of conclusions. So the content was actually less important than the experience of using or accessing that content on the device was considered to be the most important.
I suppose ease of use is important because if you're struggling to navigate something, that's taking away from the learning, which should always be the most important bit.
Yeah, it's getting in the way, basically. That's the last one. Yeah, and hopefully that segues into Owen, and indeed for the whole of the rest of the session, because we can sort of see what you need to do to ensure that ease of use and attractive interface and so on and so forth is developed. So over to you, Maestro.
Okay, well, so I will be briefly going through some of the do's and don'ts of mobile UX design or user experience design. There's a huge amount of do's and don'ts. I've kind of gone through, condensed them down to 6 really of some of the key things that I feel are good to focus on and hopefully will be of interest for you in terms of if you take anything away from today. Start off with, if you're not aware, user experience design or UX refers to the design of a positive experience during the use of a mobile device and any other kind of portable devices. And in particular, mobile UX focuses strongly on efficiency and discoverability, kind of what we were talking about earlier, which to our poll may be slightly different, but general research finds that people like anything on their phone just to be quite easy to use, straightforward and clear, so they don't have to go hunting and exploring so much. So this leads obviously to my first slide, where it's cutting out the clutter and prioritizing features within your site or app or whatever you develop for your mobile. So obviously the main thing is don't have too much going on. As a user, if you're looking through your phone and because it's such a small screen, if you're having to scroll about, look at hidden corners, it's not going to be a very nice experience. You basically want clear, large buttons that you can easily reach using your main thumb and then just quite easily progress through and travel through the site or app that you've been given.
Is that your thumb test?
The thumb test is a very good thing. I mean, in particular, I have quite small thumbs, so I struggle with my iPhone. But keeping everything kind of down to the bottom region of the phone, I haven't got a diagram on these slides, but you can find them online, where there's specific hot areas in your phone's screen region where a user can basically access using their main thumb. There are obviously accessible features on many mobile devices where you can bring the screen down, but even myself as a user, I don't tend to use that so much. I prefer it quick and easy to access, and I assume a lot of other people do. It's just kind of having there easy and just be able to flow through. So yeah, basically going back to kind of content, it's best to kind of clear out the clutter, prioritize the feature, don't have too much fluff, because the user just wants a clear and easy journey when they navigate through their learning experience or any kind of experience they have on their phone. So moving on to the next slide, again, is clear interactive elements. Again, stepping from the last slide, if you're looking through at an app or a website on your phone, you want to clearly see what you want to click, what can be clicked, and what result that click will have. As technology has progressed in terms of CSS and JavaScript and other coding languages and animations, these have got better and better, which is absolutely great. You can see here in this little GIF how the colors expand specifically from the slider here to show what's been selected. Before, you might have only had the slider color, the slider itself show that it was marked, but now with advances in CSS and coding, you can provide a lot more animations, which not only nice to look at, basically just clearly indicates what you're doing. Another good thing to have in terms of clear interactive elements are the use of shadows. Specifically, I know the Google material design focus heavily on the use of shadows for their buttons. It brings out the interactive elements away from the flat screen to show what you can navigate, and also you can have feedback on those buttons in terms of the change of depth of the shadow to show whether it's been clicked on, that you've pressed on it, and whether it's been interacted with. So moving on to the next slide. I'm now going through them fairly quickly. If there's any questions or any of the slides, obviously let us know. So moving on from the interactive elements. So you've already cleared out the clutter, prioritized the features, made it clear exactly what you want in terms of interactions. And now it's also, you want to clearly show what wants to be clicked on and when. So here is an example of showing nice contrasting colors on buttons. The key buttons that you want to click on, for example, here the add to cart button is nice contrasted blue. That's the main focus of the area for the user. That's the thing they want to click on to complete their transaction. Say if it's gone into the kind of e-learning world, whether it's a kind of submit button or a go to next page button, it's a question, obviously you want to make sure that submit button is standing out clearly for the user to show that that's the thing that they need to click on. So yeah, that's something, a key thing to bear in mind. And obviously, again, making sure that it's very prominent for the user and also accessible in terms of where their thumb is in how they interact with the phone. Next slide. Talking about buttons again. So again, a brief thing, obviously, when it comes to designing UX elements such as buttons. It's good to make sure that the buttons themselves and the elements that you click on are large enough for a user's finger. In the past, if you haven't made sure there's enough padding around an element, or that the element or button itself is big enough for a user's touch, it can obviously make a mess in terms of the interaction, which then would make a mess of the experience and make it worse. The MIT Touch Lab study, I've never heard of the MIT Touch Lab, but it's something that exists. They found out that 10 millimeters by 10 millimeters is the minimum touch target size from the average finger, basically, for, I'd say, an adult human. So when it goes into developing an actual ADing or producing an actual button within a digital environment, it equates to about a minimum of 38 pixels. Here at Kineo, we kind of do a roughly minimum of 42 pixels, if not bigger. It obviously depends on the content or basically the app, the web that we're producing, and also kind of what looks good and how it all fits. But yeah, the key thing to bear in mind is to allow enough room and padding around buttons that users can click on it easily without affecting other things. So yeah, next slide. So yeah, there are just a few do's, again, the clear ones. So here, just a couple of don'ts. Obviously, a key one is don't make users wait for content. It's bad enough as it is on a desktop if you're there waiting for something to buffer. Especially this is with mobile. Again, we touched on briefly about how this kind of generation and society have very short attention spans, and we're so used to fast broadband speeds and connection speeds that we want to make sure things are working. If it's not working, then we just assume that it's broken and then we move our attention elsewhere. A good thing to do, I've just noticed slight overlap here on here, but sorry, I'm just bearing me 2 seconds. I can see the title's changed on here. So I'm currently talking about don't make users wait for content. If you can move on to the other side, there we go, the titles have changed here. So ignore the title on this one, that's for the other one, but the content on this slide is relevant. So basically here you can see a skeleton screen for a newsfeed in the Facebook app. So basically here on low bandwidths, they basically put kind of graphical quick rectangle placeholders to show that there is content there and it's just loading. So there you can see that something's there, and then you'll wait till that is populated with actual content. The use of skeletons is something isn't used so much on desktops on websites, where we usually have quite fancy loading screens because we can. But for mobile, using skeletons is a good thing to use. The next thing, so the previous slide, where it got confusing, is basically not replicating web experiences on apps. So, like I mentioned previously, desktop web experiences are quite different to actual mobile experiences. Quite used to using desktops, even though if things buffer and take a while to load up, we're quite used to on a desktop, there'll be a nice loading screen, something to keep us busy, and we're kind of used to that. Similar to how buttons and content are spaced out, legibility of text, everything like that. As I mentioned here on this slide, the use of underlined links is quite a web specific kind of design, because it's usually quite a small part to a website, but it just shows that it's a hyperlink. If you're on a mobile device, you just want clear buttons showing for pure functionality. So for example, with this kind of privacy security terms of use, I would either lose that outside of a web app, or you could maybe have it as part of a kind of extra menu, maybe a burger menu going on the side that would kind of allow you for further info. But again, being mobile specific, you want to kind of condense all the content to being what's key that the user will need, instead of adding all the extra kind of fluff that you would have on a desktop website, because there you have the room for a user to explore. On the phone, someone wants to kind of just access that and see the key features that they need to. I think that's generally it for the do's and don'ts in terms of kind of condensed info. There's a lot more out there, as I said, and I'm happy to answer any more questions or queries that people may have. Otherwise, I'm now going to pass over to Tom, who's going to basically talk about a course that we've designed that was actually mobile first. Like James was saying at the start, we do tend to do everything desktop first using Adapt, and then using the advantages of Adapt it is then mobile ready. But this specific course we designed from the mobile up, from my understanding. So, yeah.
Cool. So yeah, as it says, here's one we made earlier. The client that we created this for was Domino's Pizza, who you probably are aware of, the takeaway pizza place. And it was digital training for their delivery drivers. So it was a kind of initial induction to Domino's for the driver role. And they had a piece of learning that would tell the driver about the expectations around customer service, the way that people work at Domino's, safety while they're out on the road, maintaining their vehicle, all of this kind of thing. They'd arrive on their first day. Within Domino's restaurants, there isn't a significant sort of IT infrastructure that you might expect in other sort of corporate clients. And for that reason, we needed to take a different approach. And so we decided that we would make use of people's smartphones. So the vast majority of people have smartphones now, and we took a bring your own device approach to this. So this piece of induction or this piece of initial training on their first day would be conducted on their own phone on a Domino's site. Most of them have Wi-Fi, so they'd have connectivity, and there would be some downloadable elements that would be available for just-in-time reference later on. On the right of the screen, you can see a quick preview of the menu that we created, but I'll actually, technology permitting, show you the course in action in a second. First, I'll talk you through some of the design considerations that we thought about when we were putting this together. So taking or leading on from some of the things that James and Owen have said around mobile first design, we wanted to use video and animations as much as possible. I think people are familiar with watching videos on YouTube, etc., on their phones. Again, easy to tap icons, buttons that are an appropriate size. We used full screen pop-ups rather than little mini pop-ups to make things as easy to follow as possible. We moved as much of the detail as we could to PDF downloads, and a bit of functionality that we added was a connection drop warning. So if people are on mobiles, even if they've got Wi-Fi, but particularly on 4G, their connection can drop out, and that presents obvious problems for tracking. And with sort of lots of out-of-the-box tools, it doesn't immediately tell the learner that the connection has dropped. So the learner could potentially be working away, but have no idea that nothing's actually completing and updating on the LMS. So we added a drop warning to the functionality, which I can demo for you. So hopefully, if the technology allows me, I'll be able to drag over an example of the learning. If the technology permits me to do it. But for now, I did have it in a pretty Chrome format, but what I'll do is I'll use my backup in Firefox, which just means I have to resize the window to give you the impression of a mobile device. So this is roughly the sort of size and dimensions of around an iPhone 6. So a few things to talk about first off with the menu. You'll see it's quite simple. We didn't want to overload it with text, so there's minimal text. It's very clear what you're meant to tap. So you've got a variety of topics there, and the idea is that a learner can just tap them and start exploring without lots of text as a preamble. If I go into the first topic, Meet Raj, we had sort of a guide character, an animated guide character that appeared throughout. So this first topics were as short as we could make them. So this one just has a little video in it. We don't need, but when people are using this on their phone, we would expect them to maximize the video as you would on YouTube. If I do that now, it won't really work in this sort of demo version, but you can imagine the person would maximize that, be able to utilize the whole sort of screen to make the experience a bit more immersive than just watching it in the sort of smaller version there. Got a couple of stats. So 78% of people watch videos online every week, and 55% of people watch videos online every day. So the target audience for this are, sort of representative of the general population. People are watching videos on their phone. People are familiar with consuming that form of media. So harnessing that and working it into the design was a key thing that we really wanted to do, and we're able to succeed in doing here. All the videos are short, as we've already sort of slandered everybody in society for saying they have a short attention span. This aligns with that. So this video is a minute long. I think none of the videos are more than sort of 3 minutes or so long here. So if then moves on to the second topic, there are a few more things that I can show you. In fact, just before I do, if I jump back, go back in, if I complete this video.
Just going to say a nice thing is already there at the bottom as well, so the user can just
it's
quickly
pretty
click next or
yes.
home, thumb area.
Yeah.
It's kind of passing your test, Owen.
My short thumb test.
Well, your short thumb test, and it's passing it to other things like 10mm.
Yeah.
10mm.
I call it the rule of thumb.
I
don't really call it that. But
that's why you're called Tom.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So once this is updated, you'll be able to see that the visited state and the completed state for the topics is really clear. You're not going to misunderstand what's happened there. You've completed that topic. So in here we've got another video, and then this again uses a very different approach. We've got, in the first one we had an animation. This one uses a variety of different video styles, GoPro, etc. To create kind of an immersive experience. But scrolling further down, again, the click items that we've got here are as big as we could make them. So we're using the whole screen real estate, easy to click, and then it appears as a full size pop-up, which overlays the top. We didn't want to have excessive instruction text. Most people will know that if you need to close that overlay, you just click the X. So again, hopefully tallying with some of the do's that Owen spoke about. Same thing with the MCQs that we've got. It's pretty clear what you need to click and how you need to interact with this. So a couple of other things that I wanted to mention here. So Adapt has, as the name suggests, it adapts to the device. So this is a narrative component, and we adjusted the functionality of this for mobile. Usually the picture is accompanied by text that you need to click a button to launch, but we stripped that out and stripped down the functionality to make it easier to use. So here the user just has to tap to scroll through horizontally, and then they've got very minimal text below that sort of tells the story. So they're only having to click one button, which hopefully makes it easier for them to know what to do and easier for them to know how to interact with what they're supposed to be interacting with and learning. If I jump on very quickly to the last one, you can the penultimate topic again. We've got big, easy to select buttons that appear as overlays. So before I hand over to Kirsty, there are a couple of functional things that I wanted to just touch on. So we did some internal and external user feedback or user testing with this. One of the things that people had an anxiety about when they're completing this type of thing on their phone is that, as I said, stuff is being saved. As sort of the more tech savvy of you may know, things are automatically being passed back to the LMS as the learner's working through. But we were finding that once learners had reached the end of the learning and closing the browser, they were concerned that it wasn't saving. I mean, it was saving, but they were worried that it wouldn't. So we added a save and exit button. All it does is close the browser window. It doesn't do anything in addition to that, but it was just giving them that reassurance that, you know, you can save it, it is being saved. Because I think that that's something that people experienced on mobiles that perhaps they wouldn't worry about so much on a desktop. So that's something to bear in mind. And then the other thing that I mentioned earlier was I can't turn my Wi-Fi off now, and I wouldn't want to because I'd cut everybody off. But if I was to do that, you would see something like this appearing on the screen. So if a driver is out and about and they needed to log into this to check something or to retrieve a PDF or whatever, and they lose their signal, it will jump in with a warning that says they're not connected to the internet and that they can continue once they reconnect. And then they can't actually do anything on here until they're sort of locked in place until they're reconnected. That stops or gets around the issue of people working all the way through to the end and then realizing that they, I don't know, ran out of data or their Wi-Fi dropped out, and then having to redo things. So it's a bit of additional functionality that we added in that was sort of appreciated by our end users. So that was my kind of whistle-stop tour of Domino's and how we've applied some of these principles of mobile-first design for a real client on a real project. Happy to answer any questions on that at the end. But from now, I'll hand over to Kirsty, who will share some of the things that she's learnt from designing for mobile first from a Fed perspective.
Thanks, Tom. So yeah, just to recap, I'm a front-end developer here at Kineo. And my main role is taking the art direction and turning that into the live sites. So just to kind of kick off, I've put a few considerations together. So I've kind of listed these out as 5 things. So that's keep functionality simple, know your functionality, get it right from the AD, make use of space, and future thoughts and actions for mobile first. Okay, so the first one, which is keeping functionality simple, limit interactions and keep an intuitive layout. These are kind of things which Owen covered earlier on in our talk, but yeah, for me, that's simple layout, no hidden information or buttons. You can still achieve high-end look with layout and style alone. So you can do this using visually stimulating imagery. It's about simple and sleek layout over busy content and WYSI effects. Know your functionality. Use mobile sites for inspiration. Quite often I find when I'm looking at stuff, what you'll see is a desktop site. When you actually look at it on your mobile device, you're quite often given a different experience, whether that's functionality stripped back or sometimes it just doesn't work. If you look at Adapt Learning and some of our plugins, you'll notice that we offer different experiences for different plugins. So one example I've noted on here is Hot Graphic on desktop is switched out for a narrative on mobile. And one thing what's quite common I've seen in learning design is one particular set of interactions, so Hot Graphic on desktop will work really well for a certain set of content, but then the mobile variation where it switches out for narrative isn't so great. So it's just being mindful that you're looking at what that functionality is for mobile, because sometimes it can be a little bit forgotten.
So like the narrative that Tom mentioned before, that we've changed the way that works in the mobile.
Yeah.
For Domino's, because we found it worked better.
Yeah, and actually Domino's avoided using Hot Graphic. So Hot Graphic, for anyone that's not familiar with the terminology from Adapt, is essentially an image that's overlaid with like click items or sort of annotation buttons that you click, and then it reveals a pop-up, which works well on desktop, but on mobile device, the image to start off with is already quite small. So if you overlay it with pins that you then have to click with your finger or thumb, just so you've got fat thumbs, you're going to get into difficulty. So for Domino's, we just didn't use that component at all, just because it didn't lend itself to the delivery method.
Is that a general sort of principle? If in doubt, leave it out. It's like,
Yeah, I definitely, I would say so. And I think, as we've sort of been saying, keeping things clear and simple is best, especially on mobile, but probably best in general, but especially on mobile. So yeah, definitely.
Kind of rule number 1, I think, when it comes to it so far. Yeah. Like I said, we've kind of each touched upon it, and the first thing that we each says is
Yeah.
keep it simple, strip it back, and make sure it's just clear.
And don't hide it. Don't hide stuff. There's a tendency with the with the desktop stuff, isn't there, to
Well, that's
hide things.
Kirsty's point here in terms of inspiration, which again, as an art director, I'm always scouring the web for inspiration in designs, and it is quite easy. You see these lovely desktop things where it's very explorative and moving huge space for things. It just doesn't work for mobile, and you often see those all singing lovely websites and desktops don't actually work in mobile. So it's something very much to bear in mind in terms of if you're looking at designing for mobile and you're looking for inspiration, look at mobile inspiration for it. But yeah, really good.
Another thing to be doing as well is to get it right from the start, which is with the art direction. So I'd always suggest to actually do the art direction looking at mobile first rather than going straight into desktop. It's quite easy with desktop AD to kind of get carried away with things which are often removed for the mobile view anyway, or just won't be visible. So it's wasted time and effort, and potentially you're making desktop look really amazing. And then with the mobile, you're kind of left feeling a little bit underwhelmed.
Yeah. So what were we just saying as well?
Yeah, spot on.
Okay, so some bits we've actually just been discussing just now, but making use of space. So on small devices, it's really important to make sure you make the use of space. Obviously, there isn't that much to begin with. Some of the examples I've got on the screen here is a project I worked on last year for Weller. For me at Kineo, this is the first project I've worked on where we really pushed the boat out for mobile first. Again, this was kind of coming in from the client as something they wanted for their users. So a component we mentioned earlier, which was a narrative, where we're saying maybe the mobile functionality for it was
Not as brilliant as the desktop.
Yeah, it definitely could be a little bit better. So that's one thing we did actually include in this and explored a little bit further. So in the last image, that is a variation of the narrative, and with this we actually introduced swipe gestures. That actually went down quite well. And again, just as I mentioned earlier, the fact that you can do it through the styling and the actual imagery itself. So for this, we went for full width video and images. So rather than having like a margin running all the way down the page, we kind of stripped that out so that you've got images and videos making the full use of the width of space available, and it just gives you the few pixels extra, and I think it does make it look a bit more high end, kind of glossy magazine.
Yeah.
And even this is a blowing trumpet or horn. This is a great project. I think it shows, and it's quite interesting, the fact that it's designed for mobile first, but even a desktop, it's a great looking course. So I think we're all very proud of it in terms of what we've done, and it shows. Spend that time looking at mobile first, getting it right there, and then desktop, you're kind of shoo-in for a nice looking thing as well.
It's not old-fashioned e-learning, is it? It's just a million miles away. It's consumer styling.
And actually,
really.
we can, and it also speaks to a kind of journey that we've been on at Kineo in finding ways to deliver like the best mobile experience, because this gesture functionality and that way of sort of swiping horizontally to move through a series of images is something that people are familiar with from websites or looking at things on their phone. But with, say, Domino's, which was created a little while ago, we didn't have that functionality available at that time. So we're constantly looking at what we've delivered and building on that to keep up to date with the technology, but also work in the feedback that we get from users on how they find the things to work with.
Yeah, and it's what we believe in. Again, going back to the poll we had earlier, where most of you kind of thought that mobile learning wasn't so important, you preferred it all on desktop, and that very well, I guess obviously is the case as you voted that, but we like to think at Kineo moving forward, and this is where we're hopefully pushing things, is bring it into mobile, because we've all got phones here and they're only getting faster and connection speeds are getting better. We're hopefully being at the forefront on pushing this. Yeah, so carry on, Kirsty.
Yeah, so actually,
Moving
that
forward.
it kind of
Just setting you
just
up
goes
each
together.
time.
Yeah, as we kind of mentioned a few times during this, but so far our focus has been tablet and desktop. But we are starting to get more of a push for mobile first. So there's things we are learning and things that we can apply. So looking at reusing intuitive UI elements from kind of examples we looked at earlier, whether it's like Facebook and Instagram and how we can use them. I suppose it just goes with the quote really, why reinvent the wheel when we can learn from others?
Mm-hmm.
That's good. And I mean, from my perspective, in terms of what I've kind of seen, in terms of, again, moving forward, is the use of kind of personalizing user experiences, making sure that what we offer, especially in terms of the way technology is going in terms of location devices. I mean, there's even points like augmented reality, and there's so much power that's in these little devices that we have in our pocket. So much so that I mean, they're not overtaking our desktop, but in terms of what's possible with them, it'll be foolish not to kind of explore and make the most of it, because we can't walk out into the world, into the environment, holding up our laptop or our desktop to view something, whereas if you've got your phone, you can hold it up onto the screen and you can see a map or a little guide to something that you point your screen at. We should definitely, and we are looking into exploring that, and we'd like to think that's the way things are going. So yeah,
you set me up again to wrap up. Yeah, you've actually said it. Yes, just looking ahead slightly. I mean, basically, I think that the moral of the story is, everything we've covered today, it's all about getting the design right to small screen. So when people experience content on their smartphones, that is basically a good experience. So it's as simple as that. And we've admitted that, we're learning ourselves, and, we can only get better with that. So it's all about getting that right. And then the other thing, exactly what Owen's just been talking about, while we're getting it right in terms of design terms, the technology is coming along. Web app functionality is increasing all the time, and we, in the end, well, now I think literally it's just happening now, and coming into the browsers. The browsers will now talk to the phones, so we can start to integrate use of the camera, sensors, geolocation, augmented reality, beacons, all this kind of stuff. Can start to build this, weave this into the mobile first content design, which is very exciting.
the social aspect.
And the social, sorry, yeah, absolutely right. The social aspect is big time. And last but not least, I suppose there needs to be a change in corporate cultures is important, because right now a lot of it, as I said right at the beginning, is LMS dominated, and that basically, why is it LMS dominated? It's because people feel the need to track, to monitor, and all the rest of it. And if they just if companies will let go and relax a bit, and that will also help content to go out onto the mobile as well. We've got some questions to answer.
Yeah, so one of the first one, if you have any other questions as well, you can type those into the chat, but we'll just go through some of the ones that were raised throughout. One of the first one was tips for low budget. I know we've talked quite a bit about how we use Adapt Learning. It's free and open source. It's adaptlearning.org. And on there, it's a bit of a learning curve.
It's fully responsive from the
But
get-go.
yeah, it is fully responsive. There are other things that we use as well.
Yeah.
The people in here are primarily using Adapt, but we do have people in our office who specialize using things like Storyline, Adobe Captivate, and Lectora. I think are the kind of the big ones that we use. And it just kind of depends on probably which one's best for you for kind of creating mobile learning. I know over the last, year or two, those three have kind of come quite a bit of a way in being
Yeah.
more mobile,
They're-
but there's
they're-
limitations.
Yeah, they're the key ones we use. I mean, obviously there's many out there, and there's various opportunities in terms of kind of budget and I guess what you can afford. I think in terms of going into budget, in terms of production in itself and not the cost of the tool, then it goes back to kind of the first tip kind of thing that we say is just simplify things.
Yeah.
Just make sure it's clear, make sure the user has a nice experience
Yeah.
that they can travel through and complete their learning or whatever kind of outcome they're going through. Make sure they know where to go and get it done and
Yeah.
have it clear.
Could almost be a
The more budget you have, the more time you can then spend on making it nice, putting in animations and
Yeah.
create that kind of
could be
emotional response to it.
this question in itself could be a webinar.
Yeah, I mean,
'Cause if
there's
you
many
think of-
points there,
there's-
yeah.
If you think about it, one of the things you could do to keep costs down would just be to look at Google Analytics and see what your users are primarily using as their devices. Like you could start maybe by looking at your website if you're more looking for a customer facing such as Wella. They could see, what are the top devices, and that way they know
But
we only really need to do for these few to optimize best for.
But Adapt is free. It's open source. It's fiddly though, isn't it, to get started?
Yeah, it's one of those ones with probably a bit of a learning curve, like depending on your experience. And
But the question was about cost, and
yeah,
it's free.
yeah.
Yeah,
Cost
Adapt
can
does have a
involve a lot of
community as
things.
well.
Has a what?
Adapt has a community online, so
Yeah.
I mean, you can always post questions in there, and people are really good and speedy at getting back.
It's a really good community.
Yeah.
That community. It's friendly, helpful. I went to an Adapt get together once where they all turned up in London. They hadn't met each other than in the community, and that was the main thing. So it was like a love-in.
Yeah, faces to the
Yeah, it was really sweet. It was really good to see. So if you really want to, if it is just about getting going and not spending too much money, that's absolutely right. Because that's like just go and talk to the community.
Max has a question. He is currently trying to solve. He said he has. I have learning content that needs the user to type text, just a few words at a time. I find this challenging on smartphone as the virtual keyboard covers a large part of the screen. Do you have any suggestions for dealing with this?
Yeah, so one of the key points I'd put to is kind of limit the amount of times the user has to type anything, because like you rightly said, it's a very fiddly thing to use the keyboard. So if you can use, maybe depending on what they need to type, if it's a personal kind of feedback option, I guess there's no other way around it. If you can do a kind of drop down where they can select predefined options, that's always a very useful thing to have. So I would maybe suggest going down that route, again, depending on the answers or the questions that you put forward to them and the answers that they need to provide. If you can kind of change it so they can choose out of a list of predefined options, it's a lot easier to do that from the kind of native drop down on a device than using the keyboard.
And I assume that if the answer has to be really free form, and that's why when you're typing in, then you consider the social dimension of it.
Yeah, you can do that. I think there's also even stripping it further and further back. What is the gain of this question and things like that? Going from a number one point of really stripping it down to what do you actually need? Do they need to input this? What is the outcome of them inputting this? Can it be this is something we often do in-house. where we have little brainstorms in terms of going, right, what does the user actually need to get from this? What is the outcome? What can we use for them to interact? Does it want to be simple? Does it want to be a bit fancy? Yeah, just kind of think about that. But in terms of typing, yeah, think about kind of drop down predefined options. If not, yeah, I guess.
Leave it down.
Yeah. Hopefully that answers your question. Obviously, if not, let us know and we can try to discuss more.
We had another question where somebody had asked, or this was more of something of what they'd want to get from the webinar. So I thought it'd be a good one just to raise again. This person asked, I didn't write down the name just because I was quickly copying and pasting, but they asked, if you're still in the room, I'd like to learn about how to provide engaging interactive content beyond just clicking things that works well on mobile as well as desktop. We kind of answered that throughout, but if there was just a few key points.
So I guess so I think that, as I sort of spoke about a bit with what we did for Domino's, was to try and put as much of the learning content as we could into animation and video. And that's got a number of advantages to it. One is that it works well on a phone because people watch videos on their phone and they can be maximized to make full use of the screen. Secondly, they can actually be, and this speaks to the last question we were talking about, video content can be produced more and more cheaply now, so it doesn't involve necessarily a big production budget behind it. And in that Domino's example, which we looked at briefly, we used things like GoPros and mobile phone footage that actually has quite a high-end professional effect to it. And in fact, I was watching a documentary series on BBC recently, and the whole series was shot on iPhones or a generic equivalent of an iPhone. And you wouldn't actually know. It wasn't a key thing of the documentary. It was just shot using them. Didn't look any different to any other documentary. So to sort of answer your question around not just clicking stuff on the screen, I think that finding engaging and innovative ways to use video, either to tell a story, a standalone bite-sized bit of video, a dramatic video, a branching sort of scenario, there are lots of options available that you can think about. Yeah.
And again, every little bit counts. If you do a video, for example, you might want to preface the video with a question, so that you get the person watching the video looking for an answer in the video, or knowing that they have to answer a question after they've watched the video. And so they watch the video and then ask a very simple question, like a multiple choice question or something coming out the end of the video, just to increase that sort of engagement and make the video experience slightly less passive, I guess. But they're all little tricks like that, they can all help. They don't cost any more to do. Also, sorry, the last thing was that on the video front, there's a plug we did a webinar on guerrilla video, cheap, low cost video making, and there's a recording of that, I believe, available. So yeah, it's a plug for a previous webinar. Sorry.
I was just briefly going to say, in terms of, I think the question was a while ago, but it's about kind of creating a new experience that's not just clicking on stuff. Is that right?
Yeah.
So something like, just to bear in mind, is to think about, I've been touched on it briefly, is kind of the emotional experience of a user, because we're so connected to our phones nowadays. Dare I say, just in screens, we look at them so much, but due to social aspects and things like that, we're getting a lot of feedback through our phone, and any kind of experience through a device now, it's good. We expect, and it's a lot more rewarding as a user if you get that feedback. So not only from the kind of standard animated effects that you get showing if you've completed something, it's getting more kind of user-specific feedback, more of an emotional, human-style feedback as well, instead of kind of just a computer with a tick and a cross. There's elements where you can bring in more of a kind of human smiley face, sad face, kind of bringing in the emotion into these devices, I think is a kind of way things are hopefully going. And again, there's this whole rise of the chatbot, which again could in itself be a webinar. Basically, we're so used to kind of talking to humans and chatting using our phone. I think there's some stats somewhere, which I don't know if I have anymore. That's it. User only uses around 3 apps frequently, and at least one of them is a messaging app. So people love chatting. So kind of, again, personalized experience, emotional experiences through the phone, something to think about. So video allows that because it's a bit more personal. It's what people are used to. And then, yeah, just bring more personal instead of just kind of flicking through screens, like you say, just clicking next. It's engaging the user, which we recommend. I think that's it. I don't know if there's any other questions.
I think that's it, and I think we're have gone over a few minutes on time, but thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. The recording will be sent out probably sometime after 2 p.m. British Summer Time, so keep a lookout for that. I'll also send out the slides. So thank you so much for joining us.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye.
Yes.